Hello, and welcome to the Shifting Culture podcast, in which we have conversations about the culture we create and the impact we can make. I'm your host, Joshua Johnson. Go to shiftingculturepodcast.com to interact or donate. If you're enjoying this podcast, share it with your network and leave a star rating anywhere you listen to podcasts. Previous guests on the show have included Kevin King, John Rittner, and Michael Beck. You could go back, listen to those episodes, and more. But today's guest is Jessica Schrock-Ringenberg. Jessica is a pastor, professor, speaker, and business owner. She is currently the director for the Center for Anabaptist Leadership and Learning at Hesston College. We have a great conversation around the vital importance of patience in the kingdom of God. Enjoy the conversation. Jessica, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for coming. I'm really excited to have you here.
Hi, Joshua. It's good to see you again.
Yeah. I really want to know, what are you really passionate about at the moment? What's Jesus teaching you right now?
Goodness. Oh, so many things. I have to tell you how I got here. I think you may already know, but through craziness. So I was a pastor in Ohio for like over 14 years in the same community. And it was like a small, rural, very traditional Christendom community. And I accidentally ran across Alan Hirsch's stuff, which just started piquing my interest in missional church and movements and disciple making. And I started experimenting. So my husband and I, our family became a family on mission, and we started just experimenting at the local pool, like getting to know families and connecting to kind of the people that would never come to our church.
Yeah.
And like what we started like doing this, we called it a discipline of hospitality. Hospitality became our we just threw parties. That's what it was. So we just started throwing parties and having people over to our house all the time. And but we called it is the spiritual discipline of hospitality. And what happened is we started making really amazing connections and relationships with these families that were like, they definitely would not go to a church, right? Then what happened was my daughter, as the good little pastor's kid, right? So she's like, Mom, we got to invite them to church. And like, as soon as she said that, I mean, we've been at this for months and months and months. And it was just like, I could just feel like the wind knocked out of me. And I'm like, okay, I know this is bad. This is a really bad idea. Anyway, so we went ahead and invited them to church, and we never heard from any of them again.
Wow.
Yeah, it was like they stopped answering our phone. They like stopped answering texts, like didn't do Facebook. Anyway, and it really, it hit me. I thought, oh my goodness, if I do what I feel called to do, I can't be a pastor.
Wow.
And so, anyway, so that led us a little over 3 years ago. My husband always wanted to own his own business. And so I was like, okay, you buy a business, and I'll just go and I don't know, plan a church, right? Because that's easy. That's how we got here to Excelsior Springs. It was just like, it's like, okay, I'll just, wherever we go. So this is what I'll do. And then of course, COVID hit. So like our ability to kind of really connect with the community is just now getting going again. But through all of this, just getting to know the community, like, and through interactions, what it means to essentially bring nothing with you into a community that you do not know, and to get to know them. I was sharing with you just a little bit, like trying to connect with your neighbors, and especially when those neighbors are like incredibly prickly. We've got actually prickly neighbors on both sides of us right now. And my brother's house, he's got some prickly neighbors, and just really learning, what does it mean for us to be not only a Christian witness, but like a patient Christian witness. Like just really, really embodying what patience looks like.
Yeah.
Because I've been reading Alan Hirsch's book, The Patient Ferment of the Early Church. And it talked about how patience was the most uniquely, maybe he called it peculiar, but it was a peculiar Christian virtue. And it stood so outside of the realm of Greco-Roman culture that people noticed.
You mean
and I'm
also
like,
American culture?
Yes, I know. I mean, and that's just it. So I'm just like, I'm not good at patience.
Yeah. No.
And so what does that mean for us if we are to embody this, and they said the early church said, Jesus was the most patient.
Mm.
That's how he was unjustly tortured and
Yeah.
killed and didn't retaliate, was his patience. And think of God's patience with Israel and God's patience with us. And how do we embody this very essential Christ-like discipline? So patience has become the thing that's just like on my heart. I'm just like, okay, Jessica, be patient, because everybody else has a gun.
Yeah, that's very true. As patience is the fruit of the Spirit, one of the fruits of the Spirit that, the Holy Spirit, as an empowered witness that you are in the community, patience should be front and center, right?
Yeah.
With also joy and self-control and all the other fruits of the Spirit. But for us, as somebody who is a patient presence in the midst of a chaotic world, which we live in, is something that could actually be really transformational within a community and the place that you live. That I really think that you have hit on something that people are yearning for, to figure out what does it actually mean to live a life that is grounded and rooted. And I think that a grounded life is a patient life. And if you're not patient, right, the chaotic life is one that doesn't feel rooted at all, and it feels like you are floating off into space. So what if for you, are there any practices, things that you've done to help you be grounded in your life?
Yes. So I just wrote about this, which is why it makes me laugh. So my grandma was, the newspaper called her like the last frontiers woman of Eastern College. She was like, the woman. She like cut rattlesnakes' heads off with like the hoe. Like, she was awesome.
Wow.
Ran away from dead mice, but cut rattlesnakes' heads off.
Amazing.
Very complex woman.
You should have just fed the mice to the rattlesnakes.
I know, exactly. So she would always say, don't pray for patience. Whatever you do not pray for patience, because God will give you the opportunity to practice. Like, she would just yell at that all the time. Like, yell, like literally. Yeah. And so I know I can't pray for, I'm like, because our family virtue, like our family is like, we aren't patient. Like, we're like an entire family of 8s. Like, we're just like, anyway. So I'm like, okay, I need to learn how to be patient. I know this is important. So I actually, this is a joke with my husband and I, because he's much more patient than I am. So I knew I had to learn this. So one Lenten season, I chose to be patient. To find opportunity. I chose opportunities to be patient. So like, I would find the longest line at the grocery store and just learn to be still in that line.
Wow.
And just pray. Like, okay. So I would find, like, because this is when I lived in Ohio. So like, I would drive to from Northwest Ohio to Elkhart, Indiana for seminary. And there's a toll road, right? So I would choose the longest line in the toll road. And I chose to drive the speed limit. Wow. Which is a big deal for me.
Yeah.
Because I'm like the person with road rage at the grocery store. Like, get out of my way, you're walking too slow. But no, and I chose to walk slowly at the grocery store behind the people who have nowhere else to be. And so, like, I know, can you get me right now? But it helped. Like, so 40 days of choosing to be patient, it really did kind of ground me in, it's okay to be where I am.
Yeah.
And it's okay to not have to get to whatever the next thing is. And it's okay. Like, all of that next things, I think we have this need to control the next thing. Yeah. And so we think that we need to get there faster. I don't know.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, I mean, I don't know what the connection between control and impatience is, but yeah. And that really did help.
It's living a surrendered life, that if you are in control, I mean, you get to control the speed at which you live.
Oh, yeah.
You get to control the prickly neighbors next to you. But if you live a surrendered life, you actually have to let God work in other people's lives. You need to unveil what God is doing in other people's lives. You get to walk at the speed of what God is doing instead of trying to control everything yourself.
Oh, exactly. Well, and instead of, and I think it, especially with us with children, like if you have children, we're always teaching them patience, right? And I've got a little 8. I've got an Enneagram 8, and his name is Malachi, and he is persistent. Like his middle name should be persistent. Anyway, and so like teaching him how to be patience, let's be patient. But really like teaching them patient responses to the people who are annoying them. Patient responses, to the kids who are bullies,
Yeah.
and really it is Christ, if you think about it. Like
Yeah.
what did Christ, maybe it was when he overturned the tables that he just kind of hit his pressure, the pressure cooker went off. But really he was so incredibly patient with those who were clearly just not getting it.
Yeah. And they weren't getting it. I think he was really patient with those, pre-believers, the people that were not in that community, the inner circle, that they were on the margins, on the outside. So it actually seems very, when we are doing incarnational mission and when we're living where we're doing ministry, our work, we should be patient with one another, give grace to others, deep grace. And that is the thing that starts to transform other people, is that the grace and patience that you sit with others, and not the I'm going to push you to where I want you to get to. But I'm just going to let that space that's there start to transform you. Yeah.
Well, and if we have the expectation that patience was, because actually I was sharing this yesterday with at the local homeless shelter. I was sharing them this like crazy new thing I have with patience, and they all laughed, and they're all like, we all are like amazing Christian people who love Jesus, but when we talk about patience, everyone laughs, and it's just like, I find that interesting, and especially now that why have we just kind of skipped over that? Like, patience, that's good for some people. I'm just not patient, and I know I can't be.
And the thing for me, I love movement and I love multiplication. And I think part of why I was really drawn to church planting movements in the first place was rapid multiplication.
Yes.
I don't have to wait. I don't have to be patient for this. But the more I'm in it and the more I train and I live it, I realize that in the middle of it, it's very slow and it's very patient. But on the outside, because we're helping everybody live this obedient, discipled life towards Jesus and bringing other people along the journey with us, that on the outside, it looks really fast. On the inside, it's really slow, it's methodical, it's patient. You go 2 steps forward, 1 step back. You go 2 steps forward, 18 steps back, and you just keep trying to move forward in a very patient way. And I didn't realize it when I first got into it, that Jesus may have a different way than I think.
No. Well, I mean, and that's why this book, so this book is like a big, oh my gosh, it's not exactly exciting to read. That's why I'm having my Kindle read it for me. But but the Patient for the Early Church, they talk about how like even the catechesis process was set up to make people begin to embody the habits of the church before they were even allowed into the body. And a piece of that was to help them develop this patience and really the ideas of what does it mean for us to take the time to embody Christ, like to really say, okay, this I'm willing to leave my past self behind and fully embody Christ in a way that shows that I'm committed to this movement. And I think from my experience pastoring in a traditional church body, the way the church is set up now, where we're, it's budgets, attendance, and programs, right?
Right.
It's a very capitalistic model of church. That's what the attraction model of the church is. we want you here.
Yeah.
We don't care what you look like. We don't care what you act like. We really don't want to do anything that pushes you away. So like, just come and give money, and I mean, that sounds really crass, but in reality, I mean, I think that frequently there is that push away from accountability in our behavior so that people will stay and give money. and far too often, I think that's the challenge of the current model of church that's based on budgets, attendance, and programs.
Yeah.
Is like, you know what, you do need to look like Jesus, but I don't want to push you hard enough that you're going to go away.
Yeah. So without that accountability, what happens? We didn't have a formation model that actually let people leave when things got tough and hard and COVID hit and they didn't know what was going on. So they're like, now I think the latest statistic is 38% of the population in the U.S. attend church regularly. Which is still higher than Canada. It's higher than Canada. But it is way down because people are starting to say, oh, maybe there isn't much formation at this church. Maybe it was just a cool rock concert that I was going to for a while.
Yeah.
What does it actually look like then to be formed in community and to embody Jesus as community?
Well, it's hard. And I think that's the problem, is like when we realize it's like being in a family, it's like being in a marriage.
That's really easy though, isn't it? It's simple.
Yeah, it's a piece of cake, just make sure that you find the right person, right? That's all it is. You find the right person, it'll be smooth sailing. But I think we have this idea that relationships are supposed to be easy if it's the right person. And the reality is it's not. And so it's like formation is commitment, it's covenant. It's covenant. And you think of the covenant relationship God had from the beginning. I mean, the covenants he made with Abraham, the covenants he made with Israel, the covenants, it's covenant relationship, like with that kind of dedication that we really need to engage being church.
Yeah.
The body needs to be a covenanted relationship in a way that in our culture, we don't understand that. Like even in our marriages, we can get a divorce, right?
Yeah.
Covenant relationship is something that we don't understand. And I think that's, and it takes patience. I mean, how do we really reclaim covenant relationships and reclaim dedication and patience and trust and forgiveness? I mean, all of that goes in there. It's all countercultural.
Yeah. And so, if we're committed to one another, if we're in this covenant relationship with the body and with God, what are some ways we could live that out where we don't bail at the first sign of problem?
Yes, great question. I don't know. Well, I mean, I do know it's going to hurt. I think it just takes pain. And I think that's something that we've been conditioned somehow, somewhere. We've been conditioned to, not expect pain in our following Jesus, when in reality, the cross and, pick up your cross daily. Yeah. Like the cross wasn't just the little necklace on my desk, but it's, it was a cross. It was like, give up your life daily, give up, you're going to be persecuted. You're going to be, it's going to be painful. And I think in our head, we keep those lofty persecutions, right? We keep the lofty pain. Like I could be arrested for my faith. But in reality, it's the pain of being faithful in the little interactions that make the bigger difference, because I'm more likely to get into a situation where I'm going to have to die in this moment and be like, I don't know, metaphorically tortured in this interaction so that I can be humble and patient and kind to somebody that really doesn't deserve it. Yeah. Even if it's my spouse. Don't ask him about any of this stuff because I'm not that great at
but I think that dying part, and it's a daily dying, and I think unless a seed falls to the ground and dies, it doesn't bear fruit.
Yeah.
And so that's how we bear fruit, is to die every single day and say, it's not mine, it's yours, and help me live out this faith with other people. So what kind of deaths are required to live out this faith journey with Jesus?
Oh my goodness.
I
I love
know.
that. My mentor, she was brilliant. She was actually killed in a car accident like 3 years into working together.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So but she was in the process of writing a book about, she had cancer.
Mm.
And she was writing a book about what it's like for the pastor to get cancer and to be in this receiving end of care, right?
Yeah.
And in that, she would share about how grieving any kind of moment where we have to grieve the lack of our ability to control something, like whatever we dreamed,
Yeah.
and it doesn't come true, there's a grief attached to it.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to become really in depth, like, what's the word? Not in depth, but we have to really in tuned to what it means to suffer loss and then grieve the loss. Because she would say that if we don't grieve that loss properly, that it's going to come out ugly somewhere else. And if you think about, you lose your job and you don't take time to grieve whatever that, you get angry, right? Or you lose this, like you get sick and you miss, like there's so many little deaths in life. And like every one of those take proper amount of reflection and grief. And if we don't handle that, it comes out somewhere else.
People do, the people that have ended their life well at an old age and have joy amidst suffering and pain. I really just want to know what their secret is. But what is joy in the midst of suffering? Like, how do we get joy in the midst of pain and suffering and grief?
Oh, yeah. So one of my spiritual director in Ohio, her name was Sister Ellen Lamberjack. She was a sister of Sisters of St. Francis.
Lamberjack, I love it.
She was like this little lady. And it was funny when we met each other, like because she was going to have an office at our church. So she was going to meet a Mennonite pastor and I was going to meet a nun. And she was expecting straight coat and a beard, and I was expecting a habit, and we just laughed. Anyway, it was fun. But she, in her very meek self, like she would say that everybody faces problems the way they will face their death. She's like, any problem you come across in life, there's a really big problem. The way you face it is the way that you're going to face your death. So like when you see people who, because I mean, oh my gosh, one of the most powerful things as a pastor, one of the things that I truly honored as being a pastor was sitting with somebody as they were dying. Like this is the most holy space to be in. And I've seen people die really well, and I've seen people not die well. And both places are holy and take an amazing amount of like presence. But just like the people who would fight and argue and like this is not my problem, I'm the victim, like like that mentality that we have, and we know that. So like if you learn how to embrace, okay, I can't control this situation, I'm just gonna have to trust, like in reality that's how like if you think about it, that's how you die. Like okay, God, I don't know what comes next, but I trust you. Instead of like, I can't go, gasping for every last breath, fighting every single situation to get your way. I mean, I think that really, to me, it's like, okay, how do I face my problems? Like, how am I going to do it? How do I practice dying? Like, I mean, I've started seeing problems like, okay, this is my death. Now, how do I do it? How do I do it well?
Wow. That's good. What in the midst of suffering and pain and grief and death, what's the light and the promise and the hope that we can hold on to through it to get us through those moments?
Well, I mean, again, let's go back. Man, it's all about covenant, isn't it? Like,
Mm.
I mean, Abraham trusted God and it was reckoned to him as righteousness.
Yeah.
Like, if you think about, we've in the Movement Leaders Collective, we're doing the movement DNA thing, and we're talking about Jesus is Lord and what that means. And what that meant for Israel was the Shema. It was they believed that there was one God, right?
Yeah.
And if you think about like just how crazy that was for Abraham, like if every part of life had a different God that you had to appease to make sure that life went perfectly well. And then you're like crazy enough to say, oh, I don't need to appease the God of fertility, and I don't need to appease the God of the harvest, and I don't need to appease this God or that God or that God, because I believe there's just one.
Mm.
Like, just think of how like absolutely insane that was.
Yeah.
For him to walk past all these shrines saying, these gods don't have anything on me.
Mm.
And I think what gods do we have that are keeping us, holding us back, that we're like, I know Jesus is Lord, but like in reality, I really better check my bank account, or I really need to look at the stock market again, or I really need to make sure that my education is like, top notch. Like all of these, I need to make sure that my family is like, we are the best and we have the best. But I mean, those are all those little gods that are begging for our attention. And so like, how do we make sure that like, when we are saying Jesus is Lord, or how we are like trusting the relationship that God will take care of us.
Yeah.
And like in the midst of suffering, that's our hope. Our hope in the covenant is God covenanted with us that if we, Jesus is Lord, if we confess with our mouth that he rise from the dead, that we will be saved, right?
Yeah.
Like here we are. Do we trust that? Do we believe that? Can I believe that with my whole body and like my patience,
Yeah.
my ability to control? Like,
yeah.
I think that's the hope.
I think that's the hope too. And I think, if we can trust that covenant relationship with God, God is faithful through it all. That's why we get to hold on to things, that are written in the Psalms, that the psalmists are praying in the midst of really, really difficult hardship and situations where, God, you are faithful, and I'm going to hold on to that promise that you have given me in the midst of it. And I'm just going to hold on, even though I may not believe it right now, but I know that you spoke it. So I guess it's going to happen. So I'm just going to say, okay, it's going to happen.
Yeah.
So it's not easy.
But if we look at this, I mean, overarching the big story of Scripture is like, God made covenant, humans broke the covenant, but God was faithful. God made covenant, broke the covenant.
Yeah.
God was faithful. God was faithful. God was faithful. Like God's faithfulness is the overarching picture of the story. And so like, we're like, okay, if he was faithful here, why not here?
Yeah. That's good. I think when I've been thinking through, movements and thinking about growth in churches or in organizations, the one thing I keep coming back to that needs to be seeded as DNA is Jesus is Lord. Like it is the lordship of Jesus in every aspect of what we do. If we don't have that, nothing else matters and nothing else works. We could be really good at doing the functions of scale, like a business person, but really, where's the life in the middle of it? Like, there's no life. It's just produce. It's production. And so Jesus is Lord. What is it about Jesus is Lord, the lordship of Jesus throughout everything, that really gets us to that place of next level movement?
Well, I mean, it keeps everything on track. I mean, I like, if it's off 3 degrees, if yes, Jesus is Lord, but I have a reason to like neglect my neighbor. Jesus is the Lord, but I really should protect my family from that, all the things, all the excuses we use to not be obedient or not be faithful.
Yeah.
Tell us where those other gods are, those other gods that we're stopping to appease before we make it, before we're faithful to Jesus. Right.
Yeah.
And I think for us to be able to say, okay, when when the disciples said Jesus is Lord, the early church, like this was a political declaration.
Mm.
This wasn't just, it wasn't just something they said tritely. It was just like, Jesus is Lord, which means Caesar is not.
Yeah.
Jesus is Lord, which means we are ambassadors of this totally different kingdom. And everywhere we walk, we are representatives of a foreign land, right?
Yeah.
We are representatives of a different kingdom, and we are representing our kingdom in every interaction. And so if we begin to take on the pure responsibility of what it would be like to be an ambassador for that kingdom in this foreign land,
Wow.
that changes like your brain, like, oh my goodness, I have so much responsibility to represent in a way that my king is like, yes, that's who I am.
Wow.
You
Wow.
know?
Well, so what does that look like as everyday life for people to be an ambassador of the kingdom? Like, what does it look like for your husband as a business owner?
Yeah. No, like that's so this summer. Oh my gosh. Well, like everybody, like my saying is like we're finally fully staffed. Thank you, Jesus. And we've got awesome employees. So God is so good to us. But it was a long haul there from like the polar vortex last February to just January. We were short staffed.
Wow.
So it was almost a year of being short staffed. And I kept telling my husband, Shem, God did not lead us to the wilderness to starve. I mean, like, the whole world is short staffed. It's not just you. Just take a deep breath. He's not good at patience either. But for us as business owners, so this last summer, we found this young guy who had a history of walking off the job. And so like all of his references said, well, I wouldn't hire him because he just leaves, he just walks off. But we really needed a guy. Right. Yeah. And so we sat down with him, we talked with him about what he needed, like what he was looking for. Like we had to date this guy to even get, and he still wouldn't commit to full time. Like he's like, so we're like, okay, we'll do part-time. And so we would talk to him. And at the end of the day, we'd say, how did this go for you? Blah, blah. Like we were just like having to date the guy.
Wow.
And anyway, I'm like, okay, so we finally offered him full time. And I'm like, so what can we expect from you? And he goes, gee, I don't know. Nobody's ever treated me like this before. And we were just like, okay. And he just look at us confused because he's like, you're so nice now. Are you going to be nice later?
Yeah.
And he was just really throwing away. But eventually he did quit. Like he gave us 2 weeks notice. And I went to him and I said, hey, listen, thank you. I really appreciate the 2 weeks notice. And he said, you guys are so nice. I didn't want to screw you over. But, like, we're just like, no, but for us, we were just like, here, he had never been treated well.
Yeah.
Like he was just another person to be used. But we've learned that with like the patience, being patient with people who can't pay on time or who just don't pay on time, or patience with people who don't have the money. And we have a man who's been paying for a unit for 3 years. And I mean, at this point, I'm okay if he doesn't pay, because don't tell people that. But I'm just like, I'm tired because he shows up at our front door. Oh, I have some money. And I'm just like, thanks. I'm in my bathrobe, but so it's okay. But no, it really does. It's like, how do you make sure that even in your business practices, we are representing the kingdom.
Yeah. And
so like, we have to represent, like we say we're Christians. People know we are Christians. We don't really tell people we're Christians. I think that it's just kind of who we are. Yeah. I'm guessing people think we're Christians, but because we're definitely weird.
Yeah. You carry a different presence with you. And I think that's actually, I mean, when the Holy Spirit actually lives with you, like, you do carry a different presence. Like there is a tangible presence that people know and realize that they're there. One of the things in that employee that quit, is that in that story, what I heard was that he was expecting to be disappointed. He was expecting to be treated poorly. He was expecting the past hurts of his life to come back again. And I think a lot of us are like that. We have been hurt in the past, and we don't trust easily because we don't want to get hurt again. What does it take for, maybe somebody like you that you're interacting with others that have trust issues? What is it? How do we get to a place where people can trust one another?
That's so huge. It takes time and it takes presence.
Mm.
And I don't know how many of us are really good at like being present. Like
Yeah.
put your phone down.
Yep.
For heaven's sake, like put your phone down, like, or like just checking in. And I'm not okay. So I think I'm an ape, apostle, prophet, evangelist. My teacher, well, evangelist and teacher are like about the same. My shepherd is like, I have to work really, really hard to be a shepherd.
Yeah.
But what I've realized is that, oh my goodness, if you're into church planting, like, and if you're with real people, like not like those church people, but like real people who are on the margins, like shepherding is the thing. Like you have to shepherd. And I think, just being able to be completely present and to genuinely care about this person and who they are and what they're going through, and patient without that timeline of expecting anything to change. I think because you can't really speak into someone's life until they invite you. And which means we got to be patient. And I think that too often Christians, especially like if you're raised in the evangelical church, you're witnessing. Your job is to like witness, and in reality, like, what, they're broken. They just need an ear. And I love Isaiah. Isaiah says, Lord, give me the wisdom of teacher so I can cure weariness with a word. Give me the ear of a listener. Morning by morning, give me the ear of a listener. So there's this connection, like the word to ease your weariness, but the ear of a listener. I mean, this is what it means to be a listener. And like, how do we be present and like just listen? I mean, nobody listens.
No. What'd you say?
Nobody listens.
Oh,
boo.
Boo. Yes. Sorry. My wife is now
funny.
rolling her eyes if she's listening to this. But if I think of witnessing, probably the most powerful witness is a genuine presence with somebody. I think Jesus said as well, as the disciples came up and to him when he was sharing the parable of the 4 soils. His disciples came up to him and says, why do you share stories? Why do you share these parables? And he says, in the Message version, I love Eugene Peterson. So in the Message, it says that I tell these stories because I want to create receptive insight into the kingdom. I want to just have receptivity for the truth. Because without these stories, these parables, people aren't ready to receive the truth. So I think when we think of witnessing, we think of like truth hammering. I think a lot of people think of truth hammering, like this is what evangelism is. But really, if we want to present Jesus to somebody, we want receptivity. And so Jesus knew that they weren't ready for the truth of the kingdom at the moment. But they were ready for this parable to get them thinking in a different direction, the story. So I think that's, really good as a witness to others, that we could be present. We could listen to people's story. We could share our own story in the midst of things and share stories of Jesus so that people can start to be receptive and ready for the truth.
Well, and I think just being able to give witness in a way that's like, this is my gift, is my story. And that's it. And like to just hold it like this and expect the Spirit to go with it. Because like, I think we have this tendency to think we have too much agency. It's my job, right? Like my job is to do this thing but it's not. It's like your job is to be faithful witness. And that's your job. You have one job. Job. Right?
Yeah, the Father draws people. I, how many times I think I share this a lot with people. It's like, how many times if you shared Jesus with somebody, how many times have you just said really weird, strange things that you don't think were right at all, and people are like, yes, I want Jesus, I want to follow him, he's now Lord of my life, and they step into it, because it's really not about a great presentation that you make. It's really
No.
about finding the people that God is already working on and drawing, and just point them to the direction that God is already working in them and through them.
Yeah, no, yeah. It's trusting. It's trusting that God's at work,
Yeah.
and that we're just partners.
Yeah.
I mean, that really is.
It's a big relief off of my shoulders that we're partners with him. That is not all on my shoulders.
Oh, I know. That's, I don't know about you, but like when I was a child of the 90s, right? So like what I was taught was like, if you don't do it, who's going to do it? Right. And it's just like, that's your job. And I'm just thinking, in hindsight, I just want to ask for forgiveness for who I was in high school. Like, I'm so sorry. Or even in the 2000s, I'm like, I knew too much. I don't know it anymore.
Yeah.
Please forgive me. Like,
yeah. I
I
think
know
that's
less.
the journey of our lives, of everybody's lives, is starting to learn that we don't know anything. Like, we know less and less as we get older. And I think that's wisdom, that
Yeah.
we actually have to ask more questions than give answers to.
Yeah, I think that's true.
Yeah.
Very much.
Good. Couple questions. One, if you could go back to your 21-year-old self, speaking of who you were, what
Oh my
advice would you
goodness.
give?
Oh my goodness. Holy smokes. Where was I when I was 21? Ooh, no, I've got it. I know. I think if I could teach myself spiritual discernment
Mm,
and how to really discern with God spiritual direction, because I know in
mm,
hindsight, I feel like I prayed for God's direction. I prayed for
yeah.
God's direction. I prayed for God. And in reality, I was just praying for God to bless my thoughts,
Yeah.
my opinion.
Uh-huh.
I really think that's true. And I honestly don't think I've really learned the art of spiritual discernment until like this, since I moved here to Excelsior
Mm,
Springs.
wow.
It really actually a great resource, Ruth Haley Barton's book,
Mm-hmm.
Strengthening the Soul of Your Leadership,
Yeah.
like learning the crucible of ministry. Like, crucible, did you know that's an actual tool? Like, it's a chemistry tool that you put your stuff in there and you crush it, and then
Wow.
you burn it until it reduces it to its bare minimum elements. And I'm like, that is ministry.
Yeah.
I'm like, that is so true. But learning how to really, how do I make sure that the
Mm,
presence, like she uses Moses's story, the pillar of fire, and like,
yeah.
how do I make sure that I'm discerning the presence and I don't get ahead of the presence?
Yeah.
Because I feel like I just turned 40. Happy birthday to me.
Happy
I
birthday.
feel like, thank you. So I feel like my first 39 years of life was me getting ahead of the presence and being like, okay, God, come on, this is where we're going.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I finally, like about a year ago, I finally hit a space where I was just like, oh my goodness, this is how you discern, like using consolation and desolation, and being able to say, God,
Mm,
why do I feel this unrightness? What does
yeah.
that mean? And then when I feel the rightness, I'd be like, I feel this peace.
Mm,
Like, I know this peace. And so, like, holding everything up, does this feel right? Does this feel whole?
mm,
Does this feel peaceful? Or do I have that sense of, something's
mm,
wrong? And if so, what? What about this is wrong?
yeah.
And just learning that, I think, would have saved me a lot of pain.
Yeah.
But
Well,
maybe I needed the pain to learn it.
but we all need to go through pain to learn. We could have a lot of book knowledge, but if we actually don't go through the process, where it's not going
Oh,
to be
yeah.
concrete in our lives. So that's true. Any resources or anything that you could point people to that they could start to learn some spiritual discernment?
Yeah. I mean, Ruth Haley Barton has written so many things. I mean, she's the director of the Transformation Center, I think. I think that's what it's called. Her work is just fantastic. And she has a podcast. I would recommend her podcast. Yeah, I for me, she has been the place that I've really, well, and Parker Palmer, I've also read, and he talks a lot about Quaker discernment processes and stuff like that, but she also does too. So they really draw on the Quaker tradition. But yeah, like just learning, and the Sisters of St. Francis, like they would use this in their decision making. Instead of voting, they would use communal discernment, like consolation, desolation, as a means to make decisions. I'm like, oh, I want to be a part of a group like that.
Yeah, that's good.
But no, actually, Ruth Haley Barton has like a like kind of a process for teams to have spiritual discernment. And I'm like, great. Wow, that's what I want.
That's great. That's good. Anything else you've been reading or watching lately that you could recommend?
Oh my goodness. I've discovered, I'm addicted to Audible. And then a friend taught me how to get the accessibility thing on my phone to read me my Kindle books.
Yeah.
So I'm so worthless now. My house is really clean, but no. So like I just finished Emma Cotterill recommended the new leadership literacies. Just finished that one. Patient Ferment of the Early Church. It's boring, but it's really worth the read. so if you take it slowly, that would be definitely a good read, but because it's historical theater, but like just really, I'm trying to think, I feel like I've just read so many books this last, but yeah, like I really think that learning about the Lordship of Jesus, and all the books I have on that are old, so they're boring too. All the books I have to suggest are really boring.
Well, if you love them, I don't think they're boring to everybody. So that's okay. Well,
yeah. I mean, John Driver is definitely the Kingdom Citizen, or the Upside Down Kingdom. I think he was a missionary in South America. I think they're originally written in Spanish, but anything John Driver writes is fantastic. And John Howard Yoder's Politics of Jesus. That will make your brain hurt, but that's definitely, if you're thinking about the Lordship of Jesus, that's take that one slowly. It'll split your brain in half. So
anything that you're working on now that is getting you excited?
I mean, we are working on the Movement DNA Accelerator that we're doing a pilot of that this fall, or this spring, and then hopefully going to launch the official one in the fall. And right now I'm the director of the Center for Anabaptist Leadership and Learning. And so we work with students from all over the United States and a few other countries. And in reality, I absolutely hate teaching in a classroom. I'm not a teacher, but I love my students. And this last week, we're working on discipleship process, like teaching them. So I teach the disciple making, call in disciple making, and then we have a lab where we practice, right? Yeah. And that is my favorite part. And there was this absolutely beautiful moment in this last week where these two students who've kind of, that like they just kind of aren't the total opposites, right? And so we are in this space of, we're using imagination prayer, like what it was like to the woman who pushed into the crowd to touch the hem of Jesus' robe, right? So the students were supposed to be imagining themselves, what was it they were carrying to get to the hem of Jesus' robe. Anyway, so one of the students just started sharing how just the amount of shame, like the fear of Jesus even seeing her, like what that was like, and just like it was, oh man, all of us were in tears when she was sharing this. And this other student who, they just kind of, you could tell they weren't totally on the same wavelength. He just started pouring love on her, and he just started speaking words of affirmation, and like, it was like the most beautiful transformation that just happened before our eyes. Like, we were all in tears, like just sobbing. And it was just like, oh my goodness, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life, is like just the simple act of disciple making, and practicing and just watching. I mean, these were wonderful people of God anyway, but just watching the transformation of the kingdom taking place before our eyes, where there was reconciliation. I mean, not that they had anything against each other. It was just that they were just totally from two different parts of like Kansas and New York, right? Yeah. And so like to have that kind of beautiful reconciliation happen.
Mm.
Yeah, it just gave me hope.
Oh,
Pure hope.
that's so good. That's good. Well, Jessica, thank you so much. This was fantastic. It's a
Oh, that was
wonderful
fun.
conversation. I loved it. So thank
Man, why
you.
do we need podcasts to have this kind of great relationship or like conversations, right?
Yeah, we don't need the podcast. You live
Yeah,
pretty
let's have
close
coffee
to me. Let's go
next
have
week.
some coffee.
Let's go have coffee.
All right. Thank you so much.
All right, see ya.
Bye. Thank you for listening to the show today. If you're really enjoying the show, please don't forget to hit the follow button on your favorite podcast app. You could do it right now. Just hit that little plus. And then I would love it if you would leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. So you could go right now to the show and leave a star rating and review and let us know how you are enjoying the show. And find us on Facebook and Instagram. So if you want to connect, interact, I post a lot of quotes and different things that you could actually interact with the episodes and let me know how you are enjoying the show. If you feel inclined to donate, there is a support the show link in the show notes, and it would send you directly to a page where you could donate so that new episodes can be produced for your enjoyment. So thank you so much for listening, and I hope you have an incredible week.